What's up, guys? Welcome to another edition of Trilogy Faceoff. It's been a couple of weeks since I did the last one, and the last one was the first time I did two franchises facing each other. Today we're going to do that again with two very new and beloved franchises, the Planet of the Apes Caesar Trilogy versus the A Quiet Place Trilogy. So anyway, let's get started. What's up, guys? Welcome to another edition of Trilogy Face-Off. Like I said in the intro, we're going to be covering Quiet Place Trilogy versus the Planet of the Apes Caesar Trilogy. If this is your first Trilogy Face-Off, what I do is I rank all 6 movies, and then after that I average out the rating that I give each movie, because sometimes the trilogy that you think is going to win, it doesn't win. So it all comes down to the numbers, and we're going to have fun with this. I'm looking forward to it. And also, Trilogy Face-Off is more of an interactive thing. I always like to get your feedback on this one. I will say, most everybody on the socials said Planet of the Apes by a mile. The Caesar Trilogy is phenomenal. And I recently watched, both trilogies. Obviously, I saw the brand new Quiet Place, and then this idea struck my fancy. And so I watched all 6 movies. Right after I watched The Quiet Place, I went back and watched the first 2. And I'm glad I gave all the movies a fresh watch, because some of my opinions have changed a little bit. And we will get into that. Today we'll do Instagram. I switch around on the socials depending on the video. Today we're going to do Instagram. Jack Rear, he says A Quiet Caesar. JD Neal 79 says, yeah, I'll give it to the Apes on this one. Movie Lover Harley 96 says, hot take, I love both, laugh out loud. KM Kevin 9966 says, I'd never guess what? Never guess that. I guess those two trilogies going against each other. I like keeping you guys on your toes. That's what I do, okay? Beast on the Horror Express says, oh, this is different, but I have to go with the Apes trilogy. Very good face-off, though. And then lastly, I'll say DD Gross says, Planet of the Apes trilogy, and it's not even remotely close, and I got quite a few that said something similar. So yeah, anyway, thank you guys for contributing to these face-offs. I have to have my glasses on when I'm looking at my phone, but when I'm looking at my camera right now, it's blurry. So now it's nice and clear. I think, is that farsighted? I think I'm farsighted. It's stuff from, like, say 8 feet and farther is clear to me, but if it's like I'm looking at my phone, I have to have my glasses. Is that farsighted, guys, or nearsighted? I think it's farsighted. So, but anyway, let's jump into the ranking first. So I'm going to go number 6, and let me say before I jump into this, I like all 6 of these movies. This was extremely tough when I got right down to the numbers, and a lot of the time I couldn't even figure out which movie should go where, and I moved quite, like, 4 of the movies I had to move around. So I like both these trilogies very much. So for now, the way I'm feeling, I'm going to say A Quiet Place 2 will be number 6. And I actually really, really like this movie. I have very little bad to say about it. I think if I had to say anything bad about it, that maybe it's a little bit repetitive with what they're trying to do with the final act. How do you compete with that first final act? That moment with John Krasinski playing the dad at the end of the movie. His name's Lee in the movie, I think. So I think they tried to recapture that. And the message here is that the kids learn how to face the aliens on their own. But overall, still a very fun, and I think even more action, which is what you usually go for in a sequel, than the first movie. So I think entertainment-wise, it's probably maybe a little bit more entertaining than the first movie. But as far as the better movie, the first movie. So yeah, number 6 will be A Quiet Place Part 2. Number 5, I'm going to go Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And I will say, for a long time, I thought this was my favorite of the trilogy. But having watched it recently, I do think it's aged the most of the Caesar trilogy, especially in terms of the CGI. When I first saw this movie, I thought the CGI was incredible. And now that I've watched it all these years later, comparing it to the other 2 movies, it definitely feels the most dated, like I said. And I think this is a great origin story for Caesar. It's beautifully told, and there are some really great moments throughout this movie. Especially when he is in captivity, and he, that whole section where he is learning how to be a leader, stealing the agent or whatever those capsules are that make the apes more human-like. This is a great, evolution story. It's the rise of Caesar. And it says a lot about a trilogy when the first movie is great, but the following movies are even better. Okay, number 4, I'm going to go A Quiet Place Day 1. I saw this movie twice in the theater recently because I saw it at a press screening, and then I wanted to take my wife to see it. And we both loved it. Interestingly, though, I saw a lot of mixed opinions on this movie. And I think it's one of those movies, some might find it boring. This isn't like a high-octane, action-packed movie. And if you're looking for that, you're probably not going to get that. But I just loved the emotional journey. I loved the main character, played by Lupita Nyong'o. I said Lupita, and oh my God, you guys lit into me. It's Lupita Nyong'o. Her performance in this, it was just remarkable. She's a cancer patient, and I think there's a message there, and I think it was important to have a character like that in this movie. I think it was smart to have a character like that in this movie because it just adds to the journey. It gives reason for her wanting to get to the pizza place, I guess. The pizza place is more of a metaphor, and some people were taking that like seriously, and it's not really that. It's her really finding a reason to live, ironically, in this alien attack. Just the performances by Lupita and Joseph Quinn, just beautiful, absolutely beautiful, and I was just completely riveted by them too. And this is just a case where I appreciate great acting, and we always get good acting, sometimes we get horrible acting, and sometimes we get like phenomenal acting, and it's so good that it lifts up the picture, because I think if you watch like somebody like Daniel Day-Lewis, he can just chew up a scene with his performances. And that's what I got with these two actors. Really great stuff. Number 3, I'm going to go War of the Planet of the Apes. I actually stated earlier that this was my number 5. That's how close these are. When I went back and looked at my notes, it was actually my number 3. So I'm going to clip in what I said about that movie earlier, but it's going to be right here, and you're confused, but I'm not. This one's a controversial one, but I'm going to say War for the Planet of the Apes. I think it's 4. It's not of, it's 4. And I'll say this about War. It is a masterpiece direction-wise. As far as like the direction of the movie, I think Matt Reeves topped himself direction-wise from Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Is it the better movie? I don't think so, but we'll get to Dawn. But this movie is phenomenal the more watches you give it, because when I first watched it in the theater, it does feel long, and there's not as much action in this movie, but it is a beautiful, gorgeously shot movie. It looks like I was getting like Denis Villeneuve vibes from this movie, just from a spectacle standpoint. Everything feels, I guess, more epic, bigger. But it definitely takes its time, and it's heavily character-based, and it's more of a revenge story. I like the message of this movie in that the thing that you are fighting against previously, you have succumbed to now. Just because of his anger, Caesar's anger and his rage. And Caesar himself has quite the journey in this movie, quite the self-discovery. And it's just a beautiful movie. And of course, Caesar dies at the very end. And that crane shot coming up and then the credits just felt very classic. Like I guess like the older movies from like the 60s. But beautiful, beautiful film. Number 2, A Quiet Place, the very first movie. God, am I glad I gave this another watch, because I think I gave this movie a hard time for quite a few years. I even stated that I thought it was maybe overhyped a little bit. After watching it this time, no, it's not overhyped. It's really just a beautiful movie. And I think it's paced so well because it starts off with that, I call it like the cliffhanger start. Remember the movie Cliffhanger at the beginning where you have that death? You don't expect that character to die, but it happens. And that's what happens at the beginning of A Quiet Place. It's their child. So what a way to start off a movie and then bounce forward a year later. And I think it was also smart about how they dealt with having children and having to be quiet and how these rules were set up. And pretty much their house, their base camp, they had all these contraptions in place to really just aid them, to help them be quiet. But the relationship between the main character, John Krasinski, and his family, but especially his deaf daughter, was absolutely beautiful. And what he says to her right before he dies, if you don't cry, then something might be wrong with you, okay? Maybe you are a robot, because, man, that scene is just emotionally gut-wrenching. And then number 1, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Guys, I don't say this often. This is a perfect movie. There is not one bad thing about Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. It is a 10 out of 10. I don't even remember if I ever reviewed it, but I'll tell you right now, if I reviewed Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, I think right now, after so many watches that I've given it over the years, I'd probably give it a unicorn. It is that phenomenal of a movie. It's, it's middle chapter-itis, right? Empire Strikes Back. For some reason, middle chapters often rise above the other two movies. And I know I'm going to get tomatoes thrown at me, but like Halloween Kills. I know that movie's not perfect. Of course, I'm not going to give that a unicorn, but it is my favorite movie of the David Gordon Green trilogy. See, I put Halloween in this somehow, but this is The Dark Knight. This is like, the next level. This is movies that come along like, once every few years, maybe. It's really great. And just watching Caesar, be a great leader. It's always fun to watch a great leader, isn't it? And just the nuances, because your first instinct about what a great leader is, you might be off. I think there are little nuances about being a leader that often get overlooked. And a big part of that is just dealing with people, being patient. The scene where he tells his son, think before you act. There's so much in that one scene. There's so much of a life lesson there. We often get angry and we react instead of thinking about what we're going to do, and maybe not even acting at all. Sometimes it's better to not just say anything, right? And this is a lesson that still rings true today with any kind of conflict. Sometimes it's better to just shut your mouth or just be quiet and let things unfold in front of you, right? Caesar was ahead of everybody on that. And what a beautiful character. One of the greatest characters, I think, in the at least the last decade. Andy Serkis, the performance he did on this character, just next level. Just a very patient performance, too. He didn't yell unless he had to, just a very quiet performance. And I think oftentimes we respect those that are more on the quiet side of things, because when they do say something, we listen, right? But if somebody's just jabberjawing constantly and yelling and trying to get attention, then it's hard to take them seriously. So there's so many great lessons in this movie. And one thing I love about it is that nobody's perfect in it. The humans have great people and they have idiots, and the apes have the same. So they have to learn how to work together. A lot of mistakes are made in this movie. And we benefit from watching it all unfold. So yeah, that's my ranking. I can tell you right now, I already did the averages. You can see on the screen right now what the score that I gave each movie, and of course the Apes trilogy came out ahead, but it was 26 to 24.5. So I mean 1.5 difference, really close. Both are really great trilogies though, and depending on my mood, I might be in the mood for watching A Quiet Place over, the Apes Caesar trilogy, just because they're just that different, But yeah, this was a fun one. I jotted down some more ideas for the future. There's a lot of trilogies out there that I can cover. Really going to be fun. Maybe Alien and Predator, stuff like that. Underworld, Resident Evil. We got all kinds of options out there. So any options that you can think of in the comments that you would like me to cover, I think it could be fun for the future. So that's it for this edition of Trilogy Face Off. Take care of each other, guys. Love you. Mwah.